The big question is, was the great Maureen Cleave, a very strong journalist in the 1960s and 70s, the inspiration for Norwegian Wood by the Beatles? Well, according to the Beatles and associates themselves, she is, but according to her, maybe not. So today we're talking about kind of the mystery of the Beatles, Maureen Cleave. Now, Maureen Diana Cleave, born October 20th, 1934, in Delhi, British India, was a British journalist. She worked for the London Evening Standard from 1958, conducting interviews with many prominent musicians of the era, including Bob Dylan and John Lennon. On over 50 years, she continued to interview people in all walks of life in the Standard, the Telegraph magazine, Observer magazine, Saga magazine, Intelligent Life magazine, and elsewhere. Now, the spouse of Frances Nichols, who she married in 1966, she was again born 20th October 1934. She grew up in Ireland, her mother Isabella's country of origin, with an English father, Major John Cleave, of the Seven Rajputs. Cleave attended Roslevin boarding school at Athlone and Howell's Girls' School in Denbigh, before reading modern history at St. Anne's College, Oxford. There she had the distinction of being the first woman asked to speak at the Oxford Union. She graduated with third-class honors in 1957. Now, after graduating, she first worked as a secretary for the Evening Standard. She convinced her editor, Charles Whittour, to make her a show business correspondent and let her write a pop music column called Disc Date. She traveled to Liverpool to interview the Beatles in January 1963 after a tip from a friend working there. The piece, titled Why the Beatles Create All That Frenzy, was published in the Evening Standard the following month and was among the first substantial critiques and profiles of the band. It established a lasting friendship between Cleave and the Beatles as they gained international success. Cleave eventually began guesting on the TV pop panel game show Jukebox Story in 1964 alongside Millicent Martin, Matt Monro, and Bobby Vee. Now, in early 1966, Cleave interviewed the four Beatles and their manager Brian Epstein for a series of one-page accounts titled How Does a Beatle Live? The pieces were published in the Evening Standard from 4th of March to 1st of April on consecutive Fridays. Now, Cleave's interview with Lennon quoted him as saying that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus, and where this was published in the States created a big furor. 5 months later, on the eve of a 14-day U.S. tour, American Magazine reproduced a remark which led to a wave of anti-Beatles sentiment in many parts of the States, especially the South and Midwest, which continues in many cases to this day. Now, according to Bob Spitz's biography of the Beatles, Lennon claimed the liaison with Cleave, inspiring the band's song Norwegian Wood, As Bird Has Flown. Pete Shotton, a best friend of Lennon's, also suggested Cleave, though Cleave has said that in all her encounters with Lennon that he made no pass at her, and Lennon later said he could not remember who the song was about. It has also been said the woman in question was Sonny Freeman, wife of photographer Robert Freeman, who shot the photos of the covers of multiple Beatles albums, including With the Beatles, Help, and Rubber Soul. Cleave ended her association with Lennon in 1966, the same year she married. Now, in addition to the Beatles, Cleave interviewed Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones during the 1960s. She favored talking to individuals who were not celebrities and avoided actors and politicians because they've said it all before. Her choice of remarkable people to interview, including, for example, Guinness heiress Eileen Plunkett, the rock star Little Richard, and Donald McLean, who was the chairman of the National Vegetable Society. She later wrote a warm tribute to Lennon in the Telegraph Weekend magazine a decade after he was murdered in December 1980. Now, when Cleave married Frances Nichols in September 1966, they had met while studying at Oxford and residing for Peru for 3 years before the late 60s because of his during the late 60s because of his job as an economist and farmer. After his mother's death in 1972, they relocated to his family home in Lawford Hall. They remained married until his death in 2015. Together they had 3 children, Sadie, Dora, and Bertie. Now, when she was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in 1992, this happened after she collapsed on the platform of Tottenham Court Road tube station. She passed away on 6 November 2021, 2 weeks after her 87th birthday. She had suffered a short illness prior to her death. Now, various articles are out there. A key one, of course, was John Lennon's A Memoir by Maureen Cleave, which came out in 1981. Of course, the rocksbackpages.com article, Why the Beatles Create All That Frenzy, and of course the Bob Smith book. Now, David Sheff also mentioned her in the 2000 article, All We Are Saying, the last major interview with John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and the correspondence obituary appeared in the Telegraph in 19 November 2021. So, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not John Lennon slept with Maureen Cleave, the fact is she was part of the big mixture of major press that was going on with the Beatles. Now, the idea about Cleave, a very strong interviewer, and she was kind of ground-breaking in a lot of ways. Now, according to an obituary, which appeared on in the Guardian, and it was a very, very strong article. Wrote the first notable newspaper article about the fresh young jokers, as you call them, from Liverpool. Now, 3 years later, an interview with John Lennon detonated the Jesus controversy in the States when he said, of course, I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity. Now, Maureen said later reports, John was certainly not comparing the Beatles with Christ. He was simply observing that so weak was the state of Christianity that the Beatles were to many people better known. He was deploring rather than approving this. She said later that Lennon had intended to be ironic, but Lennon himself actually thanked Jesus in a book published by Yoko Ono in 1986. If I hadn't upset the very Christian Ku Klux Klan, well, Lord, I might still up there with all the other performing fleas. Such was the trust Maureen enjoyed with the Beatles that the Fab Four frequently sought sanctuary from the screaming hordes at her London flat in Maida Vale. Since Ringo Starr had once revealed that, whenever he toured, the only place secure from fans was the bathroom of their hotel, the Standard Whitley photographed him with her in Maureen's bathroom for a street poster. Maureen said that Lennon was the most interesting of them, imperious, unpredictable, indolent, disorganized, childish, vague, arrogant, and very good at answering back. And yet he also listened. In 1964, Lennon showed her the lyrics for A Hard Day's Night, scrawled down on a birthday card that had been sent for a fan to his little son Julian. When I get home to you, I find my tiredness is through. Rather a feeble line about tiredness, she said. Leonard borrowed her pen and wrote instead, when I get home to you, I find the things that you do will make me feel all right. 3 hours later, the record was made. Today, Julian's birthday card is in the British Library. Now, one of the most fascinating stories that she ever had was published in 1979. A Brahms concerto can take a heavy toll on the piano. She learned from the Steinway piano technician Bob Glazebrook, who visited London's concert halls to tune the instrument chosen by the great performer for that night's show. According to Glazebrook, when he went on tour with Elton John in Moscow, he said, I don't think it was tuned all the time I was there with him. Now, in a view with 1980, the Oxford head teacher D.H. Goldsmith told Maureen his golden rule, do not bore the boys, never let them know what you're going to do next. Now, in the infamous 85 interview with Little Richard, he talked of his childhood in Georgia where the kids played in the dust on the ground. It was the color of my skin. The dirt was the same color as we were. Now, the very famous article of the chairman of the National Vegetable Society, Donald MacLean, he told Cleave that he grew the largest collection of potatoes in private hands in the world. And Catriona, 1924, the old established queen of potatoes, reigned supreme. Now, Maureen's top tip for journalists was take notes and be seen to be taking notes because it inspires trust. You'd be appalled by the number of interviewers who rely on their memory for recall. No wonder people complain about being misquoted. She always read a draft of her articles over the phone for a subject to fact-check and said Lord Max Rain, the former chairman of the National Theatre, was the only person who would draw permission for any one of her articles. Now, the idea, ladies and gentlemen, of Maureen Cleave, like a groundbreaker for female journalists, a groundbreaker for rock journalists, and a journalist that I regret not meeting. I would ask her straight out. I said, did you ever think the Beatles were going to become that large? No one knew. But she saw it early, so she was technically the first journalist to get it. So that's the story of Maureen Cleave, the great friend of the Beatles. If you like what they're doing here, we're a Beatles podcast. Let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.